Hi, everyone. My name is Abiola Agoro, and welcome to Be Defined.
Oh God, you're wet. No.
Now, today we are going to talk about decoding wokeness. And this is a lecture that I have given multiple times across different places. I just most recently gave it at my racial justice conference this past weekend. And it's a topic that really can be taught in so many different ways, but it's a topic that needs to be taught regardless of the ways in which it is taught. Now, when I talk about decoding wokeness is breaking down not only the history of wokeness, but the concepts of wokeness and the weaponization of it. Right now, and this isn't brand new, but right now, especially in the last couple of years, there has been a major backlash against any concept of wokeness. And this backlash is really deeply embedded in racism and anti-Blackness. Now, oh, excuse me, I got to swallow. As you all may know, woke has really been weaponized by people on the right, in general, various white communities, and white supremacists who sometimes tie into all of those. Woke has also become a synonym for black. And when people want to say that they don't like something that's very black, they just say woke. And this is not only harmful because it makes it seem like blackness is a bad thing, but it's very disrespectful to the origins of wokeness. Now, woke as a term was first used in the context that it was used by William Ledbetter, also known as Leadbelly, from the one and only New Orleans. Well, let me correct that. I think he's somewhere right outside of New Orleans, but he's from Louisiana. And he used the term woke as a shorter, easy way to tell black people to very literally stay aware. Now, Marcus Garvey often gets credited for the term woke, and that's very incorrect. Marcus Garvey wrote about black folks staying aware and keeping their eyes open. But again, William Ledbetter, Leadbelly, shortened it into something that could be said with one word that became extremely powerful. Now, he made this term because of what was going on in this time period in the 1920s and 1930s with, more specifically, anybody else, the Scottsboro Boys. The Scottsboro Boys were, was it 9 or 13? But numerous young boys who were accused of raping and molesting and killing a bunch of white people, which none of them did because they were not anywhere near the situation when it happened. And Leadbelly wrote a song called The Scottsboro Boys to basically talk about what was going on. And in it, that's whenever he used woke for the first time. Now, hold on, let me double check on this. Accuracy is so important to me, y'all. And I need to know if there were 9 or 13. The number has changed from 9 to 8 a bunch of times. So it's either 9 or 8 young black boys, again, were accused of raping a white woman and killing other people along that. And this happened, obviously, in Alabama. So Leadbelly really started heavily emphasizing black people being able to protect themselves. And with not only his song that enraged people across the entire country, but with his heavy campaigning that he did on behalf of the boys, they actually ended up getting released. And it's an amazing thing to see because you're talking about 1930s and seeing this type of situation in which black boys that were accused of raping a white woman and killing white people were able to actually come out and live. And that's a very big deal. So we're going to continue on. Leadbelly made this term, and woke became just this huge, powerful way in this time period, booming in the 1930s, seeing a lot of use in the 1940s, 50s, and then it became really popular in the 1970s in different ways, especially when we started seeing blaxploitation films. Woke is more than just a term at that. It's a call to action. It's an adjective, it's a noun, it's a verb, it's all of these different things combined in one word. And we don't always have terms like that that are able to encompass this kind of thing so easily. The cat is like rolling in the grass. She looks so funny. Mare, you want to come over here? Oh, she's trying to attack a bug. She looks so serious. Guys, she's so serious. She's preparing herself to pounce. Okay. So, moving forward, something that we have to talk about when we say that it's like a synonym for blackness is trying to also understand that we have different words that we use. We have anachronisms, which stand for more than one thing, but we also have in the same terminology things that are just derogatory languages. And when we talk about derogatory terms and derogatory words, we have to understand that these tie heavily into microaggressions, because something that is really crucial to understand about using words in this way and using words that mean something special and to use them and weaponize them into meaning something that is so just deliberately evil, deliberately meant to cause harm to somebody. We have to be able to call that out and see it. But with it being a microaggression, it is so much harder. Oop. Sorry, guys. I had to just change something out on here. I have an email. So, when we see the usage of woke, it is useful in terms of being able to say a slur without saying a slur. And this weaponization has been seen across the entire country. Like, I don't remember what Disney did, but they did something. And that's when Ron DeSantis started running around and being like, Disney's woke. Disney's trying to be woke. Like, they think they know this and that. And it just like was very odd considering the fact that Disney is really barely progressive. We have one black Disney princess who, as many people have pointed out, didn't even actually have her actual hair shown in any of her actual movie. And this is, again, like the first time that we saw a black Disney princess, and that's still been in the last 15 years. That's not very progressive yet, because they do a couple of small measures they're considered to be woke. And Ron DeSantis has really been one of the leaders in weaponizing wokeness in the last 2 years and helping expedite the anger and the anti-woke sentiments that exist. But he's not the only one. There have been Republican legislators across the entire country and white folks when diversity hiring became something that was more in the public eye, like affirmative action, which again, doesn't work that way. But regardless, when that started becoming more in the public eye in the early 2000s, that was a way in which, again, white people were able to say that they felt like a practice was unfair and that it was trying to basically replace other people. And this ties into replacement theory. Anyways, what does all of this even mean? When we talk about being able to combat this, it's so important that we not only reframe how we're using woke, but we don't allow for the word to be used in a negative, derogatory way by the people that are using it. And this is something so simple as just taking back the power. I still use woke, and I will never stop using it just because somebody likes it. Right now, there's a person, and sometimes I forget things before I get on here, but there's a young lady on TikTok who said that basically we should not ever be ashamed of doing something culturally just because a group of people picked it up and became wildly obsessed with it and then dumped it after making it a trend. Excuse me. And that's so important because things like the clean girl aesthetic with the hoops and all of this and that, that's going to be moved on as from a trend in the next year, very likely. And with that, people that are doing it because it's been their entire cultural history are going to get called out of trend. It happened whenever we look at the whole obsession with BBLs and any obsession with trying to be close in proximity to blackness and black views. And this can be seen from everything from the Bo Derek braids to simple as twerking. And now twerking is beginning to get looked at as something that's kind of tacky, which is insane when you look at the fact that it's not something new in any black communities and in some Latin communities. With trying to combat this, we have to just keep doing it. We have to just keep maintaining what's already been ours. And that's exactly how I think we should fight the utilization of the term woke in a derogatory context by these different groups. Now, there's kind of another part that I think is so important that we don't talk about enough, and that is the word cultural retention. Now, on one side, there's cultural erosion, and cultural erosion or cultural erasure is the idea of eliminating. Butterball, what are you doing? Delilah. Is she up there? Okay, good. We talk about cultural erosion or cultural erasure, and it's very literally destroying a culture. Now, this practice has happened in so many ways. When we think about the banning of speaking native languages, and not just indigenous peoples, but also during the time period in which slavery began in the United States, making sure that people from Africa, from the continent, were not allowed to speak any languages that they spoke there. By banning the languages, it created a cycle of cultural erosion and cultural erasure, because if you're not allowed to speak a language in public without getting in trouble, you might very literally just not speak it in the fluent way that you used to. And so the kids that are coming up aren't learning. The people who may have been learning and have been learning how to speak, learning how to use the language in the proper way, how to function with that language, may begin to go backwards. They may begin to regress. And that is such a huge part of our history that we don't talk about enough, is the fact that there are hundreds of indigenous languages that are lost or in the process of being lost because they were banned from speaking them across the entire country and across the entire world with the boot. I don't know if y'all can see that, but my cart just it got blown by wind, and I thought it was gonna fall because it just turned and it was kind of scary looking. Anyways, hundreds of languages across the entire country and thousands across the world. Butterball, come away from there. He's at the gate where he's not supposed to be, at the fence. Come on. He being stupid. You know better. Get your ass over here. Come on. All the way. Thank you. Come on. Okay. And so when we see all these different banning of languages, it's one way to take away from that, because English does not encompass other languages, words, and terms. There are so many just phrases that you hear in another language, and they're beautiful and they mean so much more than they can possibly mean in English. And so not only are you erasing who they have been, but you're watering down who they are on a grammatical level and a literal level when it comes to building a culture. So, anyways, cultural retention is on the other side of this. And what this does is it helps build back these practices by deliberately making sure that they become centralized, by making sure that people know about them, by making sure that they are not forgotten and pushed into the background. Cultural retention can look something like making sure that you pass down recipes in your family. If you have something that has been cooked since, however long, hundreds of years, generations upon generations, if the next generation doesn't learn how to cook it, it's gone. And unless you have some sort of physical documentation of it, we don't have it to maintain. And so just being able to make sure that something is passed on and that it's taught to the upcoming generation is how you rebuild a culture, how you maintain a culture, how you grow a culture, how you save it. This looks a lot of different ways, not just in terms of food, but in terms of language, but in terms of being able to properly attribute traditions and other methods that we see in the world to the groups that made them. Understanding hip hop culture is a huge thing when it comes to understanding Black power, Black empowerment, Black artistry, and Black brilliance, because hip hop was not anything that had been done before. It was not something that the world had seen. And when it was created, it was a big deal because it pushed Blackness to the forefront and it gave Black people another method to use as an outlet to teach people, to spread awareness, and sometimes just to get their anger out, just to get your feelings out, to be able to express what's going on inside you, what's going on in your community. But now people have started saying that hip hop culture is our culture. It's American culture. It's this and that. Hip hop is a Black American culture. It is from here. It is rooted here. But across the entire world, we've seen groups of people, especially white people, try and claim credit for hip hop. And when they can't claim credit for it, they then try and demonize it by saying that it's destroying the world. And if we're really going to talk about music genres that are destroying the world, it wouldn't be hip hop. Let's just say that. So, being able to actually teach children, teach people, this is what hip hop looks like. This is where it comes from. This is why it exists. And this is who made it, not who you're being told made it. And I think that I really wish more people would be able to lean towards this process. When I gave this lecture this past weekend, I had a woman who said, well, what are we supposed to do about all this then? And like, how are we supposed to get ourselves to think deeper? And what I said was ask questions. Like, ask all the questions. Keep asking them. Ask stupid questions. Ask questions that you wouldn't want to ask by finding somebody who you can ask. And I get a lot of DMs from you guys, especially my kiddos who I love to death, asking things and assuming that they're going to get in trouble for asking a question. And there's a difference between asking a derogatory question, something that is meant to minimize someone's experience, something that is meant to bring about the kind of answer that will validate the negative or incorrect assumptions that you're having, against asking an actual question because you don't know something and you want to know. And like I said, I will always answer the questions that I see and that I can answer every single time. I send a lot of you guys video messages back because I don't feel like typing all that sometimes. Plus, I think better whenever I'm able to just verbally express it. And I think it's nice to see a face in different things. So, asking questions, asking all the questions. When you look at the way that little kids exist in the world and it pisses adults off, they will ask you everything and they will break down your answer into 3 more questions. I've had little kids walk up to me and say, I'll never forget this. A little girl, when I was at my high school for an event, said, why is your hair like that? I had my hair combed out, it was in a big old afro. And she said, what's wrong with your hair? I said, I'm black. There's nothing wrong with my hair. And she said, well, why? And I was like, well, why am I black or why is there nothing wrong with my hair? She was like, why is nothing wrong with your hair? And I explained to her, this is how the follicles grow out of my head. She said, why? And I was like, great question, because this is how DNA is encoded. This is how this works. And she said, why? And I said, okay, let's go deeper. Let's talk about the reason why DNA exists and let's talk about the evolution of DNA. And by the end of it, this little white girl was like, okay, like I'm intrigued. I've been taught something. And then she ran away. And most of the time, other adults would have been furious, being like, just because it just is what it is. And just is what it is erasing so many conversations that we need to have. It's the reason why we have a regression of critical thinking in this entire country, because nobody wants to take the time to actually answer the questions. And let's be honest, answering questions is hard. It's much easier to try and just silence a conversation than it is to take the time, the energy, the effort to elevate it and think about it. When you actually have to think about why you did something and why that why got you to the point where you did something, you're going to have some sort of epiphany and you're going to be able to see a pattern in everything else that you do. And you can't go back from there. And that's terrifying to a lot of people because then you don't get the excuse to say that you just didn't know. Because not only do you know, but you understand the basis of it. So it's so important to continue to fight back against the demonization of wokeness. Every single moment that we take the time to have these kind of conversations, to learn, to dig deeper, we can reclaim the culture, we can reclaim the terminology, and you make it to where the people that want to call you woke in a negative sense actually have to just say what they want to say. And when they just say what they want to say, it's going to be some slurs. And then we can finally expose it for those people who try and keep their eyes closed. That is all for now. I am needing a nap. So I want to thank you all for listening and be prepared for another episode. I think we're going to release episodes every Friday or so. And I'll make sure that I get you guys another one this week since this one was a little bit late. So thank you for joining me on my little summary of Decoding Wokeness. Bye, y'all.